I'm going to be talking about our experience with satellite leak detection. 2 years ago, we hired Utilis to provide satellite leak detection for us, and we've been using Cityworks to basically track and to look into those results. I'm first going to give you guys a little bit of the background on the utility and our leak detection history. Then I'm going to talk about the satellite leak detection process itself. And then I'm going to go into our results and findings utilizing Cityworks. I'm going to give you some fun facts about the utility. Our distribution system dates back to 1882. And yes, we do have cast iron water main that's live and in the ground for 140 years right now. We have 440 miles of distribution main and then another 70 miles of transmission main. Our distribution main is comprised mainly of cast iron, Phipps hydraulic, ductile iron, and PVC. And then our transmission main is mainly made up of pre-stressed concrete cylinder pipe and steel. And then we also have 35,600 water services in our system. And those materials are basically galvanized iron, copper, polyethylene, cast iron, ductile iron, and PVC. We also have approximately 10,000 valves and 4,000 hydrants in our system also. So as you can see, there's a lot of appurtenances that can be leaking and that we also need to maintain and keep track of. A few more fun facts about the utility is our average day water usage is 18 million gallons, and we have 7% unaccounted for water. And we also average 150 water main leaks per year. And then this photo on the bottom of the screen is one of our water main breaks on a 36-inch main a few years ago. Obviously, not all of our leaks are quite this catastrophic, but the point I'm trying to make is if you can find when it's a leak, it's much better than letting it rupture and have a break and then you're dealing with a real mess. I'm going to go into a little bit of our leak detection history now. Up till 2 years ago, we hired a contractor each year to come in and do approximately 20% of our system. And as you can see, what we would end up finding is about a leak for every percent of the system that we would do. So if we were doing 20% of our system, we were finding 20 leaks. There's some years we were doing 10%, we'd find approximately 10 leaks. One year we did 30%, and lo and behold, we found 31 leaks. So basically for every percent of the system, we were finding a leak. And we're doing 20% of the system, we were doing it geographically. So basically after 5 years, we'd loop back around and we'd start over again. So it was like a 5-year cycle to get through our whole system. And with doing 20% a year, we were doing about 90 miles a year, and we were finding a leak for every 4.5 miles that we actually surveyed, which came out to be about a leak a day. I'm going to get into the how the satellite leak detection works. How it actually works is the satellite will send a ground penetrating radar that can penetrate the earth up to about 10 to 12 feet in depth. And what it's looking for is soil saturated and treated drinking water. And for it to be saturated enough to detect, the leak has to be at about a half gallon a minute rate and be leaking for anywhere from 24 to 48 hours continuously. And then basically, once the satellite detects those parameters, it'll send back, basically it's a point of interest is what we get. And what we have to do then is these points of interest, we still need to physically go and perform leak detection on. So what it does is it pinpoints where we can look in the system as opposed to just doing a random 20% geographically. So it'll give us the hotspots / points of interest that we need to concentrate our efforts on. And what I wanted to show here, these two images to the right are actually what the satellite imagery, the area it can detect. And you can see it can cover up to 1,300 square miles of area in one image. And since Green Bay is literally only 50 square miles, there's a lot of additional square mileage it covers other than our system. So in 2019, we included 3 other communities in on this image. And in 2020, we actually included 11 other communities in on that image. So you can capture a lot more than just yourself. If some of the surrounding communities want to partake, there's definitely enough satellite coverage. Another interesting point is the satellite is back in position and can recapture that image on 2-week intervals. And what we ended up doing was selecting an image more towards the end of March, early April timeframe. And we do that because we want to have the image taken as close as possible to when we can actually get out after winter and start physically doing the leak detection work, or it's more advantageous when the weather's a little nicer. So that's why we picked the time of the year to have that image. Like I had mentioned, the points of interest that we get back from Utilis. This image right here shows the different points of interest that we have to go to. So these yellow orangish segments are where our crew needs to go out and physically do leak detection. So you can see it's scattered around the city. It's kind of all over the place. In lieu of the kind of the neater system before, where it was, you're doing 20% geographically, this is more spread out, but it's a lot less area. As you can see in 2019, we had 207 different points of interest, which comes to 11% of our system. And then in 2020, we had 288 points of interest to go investigate, which came to 12.4% of our system. So you can see we were, in the 2 years of satellite leak detection, we were doing 11 and 12% of our system, where previously we were performing leak detection on 20% of our system. So we cut our the amount of leak detection in almost half as far as like mileage goes. And then what I'm showing here is this is actually a zoomed in point of interest. What Utilis will do is they'll send a shape file to us of all the different points of interest, and then we can put it in our GIS and Cityworks. And basically this orangish, yellowish highlighted area is overlaying our distribution system. And what we end up doing is we go to every hydrant, every valve, every water service has a corp stop, so we listen on every corp stop also. So anything that we have physical access to, we'll listen on to try to find the leak. And on average, each point of interest is about 1,400 feet of water main that we're covering. And what we have done is we've taken every point of interest and we created a work order in Cityworks for it. And we also, what we did is we created a tab in Cityworks. And this is a screenshot of that tab that we've created to help track our points of interest. You can see this, the top of the tab here is how many open excavation work orders we have. You can see we have 6 of them, and what that's really telling us is that the point of this snapshot, we had 6 different points of interest that we found leaks on that we hadn't fixed as of that point. The next part of the tab showing 44 is that we had, at this point in time, we had 44 different points of interest we had leaks on that we physically went out with our crews and fixed those leaks. And then this next area of the tab, where it's in owner side service leaks, these are actually leaks on the property owner side. So through Cityworks, we generate a letter and we send a letter out to these property owners telling them they have a leak on their side of the service and they need to fix it. And then this is just the tab continued. And at this point, you can see we have 288. We had actually got to all 288 points of interest at this point and physically did leak detection on them. And these are supposed to be the open work orders here. We had 0 because we visited them all, but during the course of the summer, you can track how many points of interest you've been to, how many you have left to do, so that way you can either ramp up your efforts or however you want to coordinate your work. Another thing that we did in Cityworks is we created a tab for additional work orders created while we were out at these points of interest. Because when our crew guys are out at these points of interest, we're finding other things that that we need to actually do some maintenance work on. And primarily what it is on the curb boxes themselves. A lot of these curb boxes you find are bent or they're knocked sideways where you can't actually physically catch the stop anymore. So we create work orders for our crews to go out and physically perform that work. And kind of the interesting part of that is we had 84 points of interest in 2019 that were actually came back in 2020. They were re-identified again that we didn't find leaks on the first go around. So after we went through in 2020 and on those that we couldn't find the leaks on the second time around, we looked at this tab and we said, hey, we have some open work orders here on some curb boxes that we need to do some maintenance on. And so sure enough, we said, let's reprioritize those work orders and then move them up. And actually when we fixed some of those gate boxes, we'd go back and we would do leak detection on those spots because some of these leaks are pretty small and hard to hear. And just last week, we literally found another leak where we fixed a gate box where we hadn't heard it because we just weren't close enough. And you can see in 2019, we generated 173 additional work orders. And in 2020, we generated an additional 199 maintenance work orders. Like I said, they were mainly curb boxes for the most part. Some of the other information that we're able to track by utilizing Cityworks. For example, in 2019, we visited 207 points of interest and we found 57 leaks. And because we were able to query it through Cityworks, we're able to break it down between water mains, valves, hydrants, services, water services on the homeowner side. We have a nice breakdown of where these leaks actually were. And kind of an interesting tidbit on our 12 water mains that we found leaks on is 5 of them were actually 16-inch cast iron water mains that we were actually able to go and make the repairs on those while they were still leaking in lieu of them breaking on us and having to respond to them under emergency situations. The other thing we were able to do with Cityworks is be able to take a deeper dive into these points of interest and our findings out in the field. You can see here, this is our map, and these yellow segments are the points of interest, and then these blue kind of stars are where we're finding some of the leaks in our system. And we're able to break it out and say that we had 206 points of interest here. A little less than half of them were in one pressure zone, in our John Street zone. So the whole rest of our zone is basically comprised a little more than half of the leaks. And you can see in John, we were finding them at a 45% rate. We were able to find leaks on those points of interest. For the whole rest of the city combined, we were finding them only at a 14% success rate. So we were 3 times more successful in our John Street pressure zone than we were in other areas of the city. Just kind of a interesting information we were able to track and analyze and help us in the future. Same thing in 2020, we looked at the results, and Well and behold, we found 63 leaks in 2020 compared to 57 in 2019, which if you remember previously, we were finding 20 leaks a year. Once again, we have them broken down in between our different appurtenances here, water mains and valves and, etc. Once again, this is a map showing kind of our 2020 results, and basically we queried kind of the same thing. A little less than half of our points of interest were in the John Street zone, and we were twice as successful in 2020 finding leaks in John Street as we were compared to the rest of the city. Now I'm going to go over comparing some of the results that we found utilizing satellite leak detection compared to our previous method of leak detection. In 2019 and 2020, we found 57 and 63 leaks compared to 20 leaks previously under our old method. Utilizing satellite leak detection, we were physically going out and performing leak detection on 11 to 12% of our system as compared to doing 20%. So in essence, we're finding 3 times the amount of leaks, and we're physically investigating almost half as much mileage of leak detection. What that correlates out to is with the satellite leak detection, we're finding 1 leak for every 3/4 of a mile of physical field leak detection, where in the past we were finding 1 leak for every 4.5 miles of satellite leak detection. So we're much more efficient. Another advantage of the satellite leak detection is we're able to analyze our whole system every year. Basically, that satellite is capturing the image of our whole system each year, where under our previous method of doing 20% a year, it took us 5 years to make our way through the whole city. And now I'm gonna kind of, what I like to call our cost savings fun facts. I like to give out how much volume of water we believe that we saved by finding these small leaks that weren't surfacing. You know, if you look at 1 leak and you assume that a leak is at 1 gallon a minute, which is not a very big leak when you really think of it. You know, you're thinking a gallon a minute leak, that doesn't really amount to a whole lot. But if you take that 1 leak and you let it go for a course of a year, that comes with the 526,000 gallons of water in a year. If you take 60 of those leaks, that comes to 32 million gallons of water in 1 year. That's approximately 2 days of our water usage, since we average 18 million gallons a day. Another thing I like to compare it to, our field guys can kind of wrap their arms around this a little better, is our unidirectional flushing program. We only use 30 million gallons a year unidirectionally flushing our whole system, and that's flushing 220 miles of our distribution main, and that's 40 hours a week from April through October that we have hydrants open full blast to scour our mains. So if you think of that, it's almost 7 months of a unidirectional flushing program uses less water than 60 small leaks leaking during the course of a year. Like I always like to say is, you know, these small leaks, they don't take nights off, they don't take the weekends off, they don't take holidays off. This is a perfect example of a slow and steady kind of winning the race. Another thing I always kind of like to say is, you know, leaks, they don't rusty up over time, they just get bigger. And when a leak gets bigger, eventually they're going to turn into a water main break and just not a leak. And unfortunately, they always seem to be unplanned, and they're after hours, they're on weekends, they're very inconvenient timing. You're paying overtime to have crews come in, you're having extra signage for traffic control, extra pavement repair. The costs just get more when you're trying to react to a break instead of fixing a leak. So I guess to wrap it up, you know, if you want to find the small leaks, you got to look for them, and that's what how we've chosen to do it, is through our satellite leak detection, and then having Cityworks help us, you know, analyze and track our findings.